We continue now at the top of Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 14a. The Gemara is in the middle of discussing how Maimet Shloshton works. Again, Maimet Shloshton is, let's say, a lender says to a borrower, the money that you owe me, you should now give to so-and-so. And this is done in the presence of all three of the participants. So we say that does create a kinyan. He now does owe the money to that other person. And Rav Ashi explains, how does that kinyan work? There's a certain benefit now that the borrower gets, because now the loan is changing from an old loan to a new loan. So therefore, Gomer Mishabed Nafshe, therefore he is Mishabed himself. He says that he's going to obligate himself towards this new lender. Rashi says, what's happening over here is this milva is changing from an old loan to a new loan. It's a way of pushing off. He doesn't have to pay back as quickly. So therefore, since this milva changes, again, from a milva yeshana to a milva chadasha, that's what allows the kinyan of Maimet Shloshton to work. Amar le Huna Mar Bereder of Nechemia Rav Ashi. So Huna Mar Bereder of Nechemia said to Rav Ashi, Elameata, but according to that reasoning that the person is happy that it's changing to a new loan, could go and Hani Devei Bar Yoshev. What about the family of the house of Bar Yoshev? The Kavsi V'Shakli La'alter. They are known to be difficult lenders. They'll tie people up and they'll take the money right away. So over there, the person certainly will not be happy that the loan changes over to the Bei Bar Yoshev. So Hachinami Delo Kanu, are you going to say that over there the kinyan of Maimet Shloshton will not work? Now, if you're going to say that indeed that is the case, the kinyan does not work by the Bei Bar Yoshev, by the house of Bar Yoshev, and if that's the case, so then you're saying that your words only apply in certain circumstances and not others. We generally do not say that, so this cannot be the reason that Maimet Shloshton works. And so the Gemara instead says, Elamar Mar Zutra, rather, Mar Zutra says, Hani Telos Mili, the following three items, Shavinu Rabbanan Kilchasa below time. The Rabbanan say that they're like a halacha without any reason. Chadaha, one is this idea of Maimet Shloshton, the fact that Maimet Shloshton creates a kinyan is something that doesn't really have a reason. V'idach, another one, Damar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, because Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Hakosev kol nechasav li'ishto, if somebody writes over all of his property to his wife, lo asa el apetrapi, he's really only making her a caretaker of the property. V'idach, and the other one, Damar Rav Chananya, because Rav Chananya says, Hamasi isha livno gadol bebayis kana, if somebody marries off a woman to his oldest son in the house, so the son actually acquires that house. And Rashi explains, Bebayis miyucha, this is like a designated house, she'ino darba, that he doesn't live in, el aso lo lebeis chasas, it was made for the purpose of the wedding again, so the son acquires that house. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav le Ravacha Bardula, Rav said to Ravacha Bardula, Kabed de Morika isli gabach, there's a kav of saffron of mine that is by you, Yahave le Ploni, give it to so-and-so, again this is the case of Maimet Shloshton, Ba'ape klamin alach, and I'm saying this to you in front of him, to lo hadranabi, that I'm not going to retract. So here you have a case of Maimet Shloshton, all three parties are there, and he says that which you owe me give to him, but the Gemara says Mechlal, but the way he's saying the statement implies the Iboy Hadrabe, that if he wanted to, he could retract the statement. He's saying, I'm not going to retract, as if he's able to retract. The boy Hadrabe, Matzi Hadrabe, that if he wanted to retract, he could retract. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the case. Hachi Kamar, this is what he was saying. Devarim halalu lo nitnu lechazar. When you do a kinyan in this fashion, words like this, there is no ability to retract. When you do a kinyan by Maimet Shloshton, when all three parties are there, and you make this kind of a kinyan, it cannot be retracted. But the Gemara says, so Amar Rav Chadazimna, but didn't Rav already say this once? The Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, because Rav Huna said that Rav said, Mana li biyadcha, if a person says there's a man of mine in your possession, Teneulo leploni b'maimet shloshon kan, he says give it to so and so in the presence of the three people, so that it is a kinyan. And so the Gemara says, if I only had that case, Hava mina hani mili matana meruba. I might think that only works by matana meruba, like a mana is 100 dinar, that's a large gift. Aval matana muetis, but let's say it's a smaller gift, like this case where it's a kav of saffron, lowly boy b'fanav. So then maybe it doesn't even need to be in front of the three people. Maybe it doesn't need to be in his presence. Kamash malon. So we're saying no, even by a matana muetis, it needs to be in the presence of all three people. And Rashi explains, Hani mili d'ba'inan b'fanav matana meruba could go in mana. When you're talking about a large gift like a mana, so then it needs to be in his presence. Kamash malon lahachi yitzrich lamemer ba'ape klaminalach. That's why Rav was saying, I'm telling you this in front of him. Lashmina dekava demorika dematana muetasi boy nami bi'ape. The point is, even by a kav of saffron, which is a small matana, it needs to be in his presence for the kinyan to work. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Hanu ginoi David chushbina bahadi hadadi. There were gardeners who made a calculation among each other. Pash chamesh istri zuzi gabi chad minai. When one of them, it turned out he had 5 extra istri zuze. Istri zuze is a kind of coin. Amri lei, so they said to him, Yavinu nihile l'mariara ba'ape mariara, in front of the owner of the land, means to say it was a maimet shloshton, all three parties were there, so they said to him, give it to the owner of the land, and they said that in front of the owner of the land, v'kani mine, and in addition, they made a kinyan chalipin so that it would be binding. L'sof azal avad chushbana bein dilei l'nafshe. Now at the end, this gardener who had supposedly had an extra 5 istrei zuzeh, he made a calculation with himself, and lo pash gabe v'lo midi, it turned out that he didn't have anything that did not belong to him. He didn't have anything extra. So asal l'kamid Rav Nachman, so he came before Rav Nachman, Amar lei, said to him, my avidlach, what am I going to do for you? Chada damar Rav Huna Marav v'od hakanu minach. Number one, we have the statement of Rav Huna Marav, meaning we have the statement that maimet shloshton creates a kinyan, and you did a maimet shloshton over here, all three parties were present, and furthermore, they made a kinyan chalipin, so that also made it binding, so there's nothing we can do, we can't go back on the kinyan. Amar le Rava, so Rava said to him, Atu haimi ko amar lo yahavina, is this person saying that I don't want to give it, I don't want to go through with the kinyan? Deleka gaboy kamer, he's saying that they made a kinyan on something, he's saying I don't even have it, he's saying it doesn't even exist. So then Amar le, so then he said to him, if so, kinyan b'tos, that's a kinyan that was made by mistake, v'chol kinyan b'tos choser, anytime you have a kinyan that's made by mistake, so that kinyan does go back, and therefore the kinyan is not going to take effect. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have a machlokas amoroim, holech mone leploni shani chayev lo. Let's say somebody says to a shliach, take this money to so-and-so because I'm chayev to give him a money. Amar Rav says, chayev achra yusuf, so the meshaleach, the person sending the money, is chayev in the achrayas of that money. He takes responsibility, meaning if something should happen and the money doesn't get to the person he's sending it to, so he's still responsible, he has to send the money. And if he wants to retract, he's not able to retract. And what Rav is saying is somewhat of a contradiction, because Rav on the one hand is saying that the meshaleach is chayev achra yusuf, meaning it's not as if it reached the person that it's supposed to get to, but on the other hand, he says in bol achzor eino chozer, if he wants to retract, he's not able to retract, as if it already has reached the hands of the person he's supposed to give it to. And so that's what Shmuel points out, and Shmuel argues, or Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says no. Mitoch shechayev achra yusuf, since you're saying he's chayev and he takes responsibility until it actually physically reaches the makabel, so therefore on the contrary, in bol achzor chozer, if he wants to retract, he is able to retract. And the Gemara now says, Lema b'ha kamiflagi. Let us say they're arguing about the following. The Marasavar holech kischi dami, that one says holech is kischi, meaning when he says holech mana leploni, it's as if he's saying bizocha in this for ploni, and it's as if he has received it immediately from when the shliach gets it, and that would be Rav's position, and that's why Rav says he's not able to retract. The person who was makabel was already zocha. Umar Savar, and the other one says Shmuel says holech lav kischi dami, holech is not like zechi, and so therefore he's able to retract because it did not yet reach the makabel. And the Gemara says, lo, no, the kuliyal holech kizachi dami. It could be that everybody really agrees holech is kizachi. And here they're arguing as follows. Mar savar lo amrinan migo. Rav says we don't say this idea of migo. Mar savar amrinan migo. And Shmuel says we do say migo. In other words, Shmuel says, since we're going to say that he's chayev ba'achrayis, so therefore he's able to retract. Really, everybody agrees holech kizachi. And really, he shouldn't be able to retract. Really, Rav essentially is correct that there should be no retraction. But Shmuel says, since we're saying he's chayev ba'achrayis, that makes it that he's now able to retract. We say this principle of migo. And the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasi to Rav, we have a brisa that supports Rav, Holech mana leploni shani chayev lo. If a person says, take a mana to ploni, that I am obligated to him, tain mana leploni shani chayev lo, or give a mana to ploni that I'm chayev to him. Holech mana leploni pikadon, sheyesh lo biyadi, take a mana to ploni, it's a pikadon, a deposit that is his, that I have in my possession. Or tain mana leploni pikadon, sheyesh lo biyadi, or give a mana leploni, this pikadon, this deposit that's his, that I have in my possession. So chayev achrayuso, he's chayev in achrayus, he is responsible for it until it reaches the individual. But if he wants to retract, he is not able to retract. And the Gemara says, 1 second, Pikadon, one of the cases that you just gave as an example is this case of Pikadon. But Lei Malay, why can't he say to him, Ein Ritzono Shie Pikdono Biad Acher? Rashi over here says, Lei Malay Hai Meshaleach. Let the Meshaleach say to him, Ein Ritzono Shal Mafkid Shie Pikdono Biad Acher. The person who gave me this deposit, actually, he doesn't want you to have it. He doesn't want me to give it to someone else. It's a deposit. He only wants me to have it. That's a rule we say later on in the third parak. The Kevan de Ein Ritzono. In other words, the point is by a pikadon, maybe he doesn't want the shliach to have the pikadon, maybe he only wants the person who he gave it to have the pikadon, and therefore it's a chov, it's actually considered something negative when he gives it to the shliach. The rule is that you can't do a chov for someone unless he's present. So if that's the case by pikadon, why isn't he able to retract? He should be able to retract and say, forget it, don't take it, because ein ritzono shei pikdono bi'ad acher, I love zechiyu. This should not be considered a zechus. And the Gemara answers answer is Amar Reb Zeira. Reb Zeira says, Kishahuchza Kafra. In this case, the Pikadon is talking in a very specific case where the Mishaleach, the guy sending back the Pikadon, has actually already denied it. He's certainly somebody that the other individual does not want him to have it. He'd rather be given over to the Shaliach. Rashi says, Kishahuchza Mishaleach Zeh. This Mishaleach is already presumed Kafra. He's already somebody who's denying the Pikadon. He's denying that he owes this Pikadon. It's clear to us, we're like witnesses, we know for certain that the owner is happy that it should leave the Mishaleach and it should be in the hands of the Shliach. And the Gemara continues, Rav Sheshes Havale Asharta Desar Believe in Mechuzah. Rav Sheshes, he was owed money for some cloaks in Mechuzah. Amar Leila Rav Yosef Bar Chama. So he said to Rav Yosef Bar Chama, Bahade de Asas, when you come back from Mechuzah, I sinu nehili, bring me the money that I'm owed. Azal Yavinu Le. So they went ahead and they gave this money to Rav Yosef Bar Chama to deliver it back to Rav Sheshes. Amri Le, they said to him, Nikni minach, let's make a kinyan, meaning to say, let's make a kinyan chalip and let's make it binding, and therefore you're going to be responsible for the items. Amar Lu, he said to them, yes, we'll make a kinyan and we will take responsibility. L'sofish tamitlu, but in the end he escaped from them, meaning to say he left, and he was able to do it without a kinyan. Kiyasa Lagavi, when he came to him, Amar Le said to him, Shapir Avanid, what you did was correct. It's good you didn't make a kinyan. They should be the ones that are responsible. To lo shavis nafshach eved lo v'li ishmalva, because you shouldn't make yourself, like we say, a borrower is like an eved, is almost like a slave to the lender. Don't take an obligation upon yourself. That's not necessary. Lishnachrina, there's another version of what he told him. Shapir Avanid, you did correctly, because eved lo v'li ishmalva, because they are the borrowers. They're the ones that should be taking responsibility. And the Gemara continues, Rav Achi Rav Yoshia Havale is ispika dechasba ben Nahardoy. Rav Achi Rav Yoshia, he had a silver vessel in Nahardoy, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yadalid Amid Beis.